Labour is looking to raise welfare by 15 billion in this forthcoming budget. That's 15 billion with a B. Obviously, they haven't read the runes and realised that we have a debt and deficit problem in this country, and they continue to spend money like a drunken sailor. The total cuts that we're expecting, not very much, but time will tell. The FT is reporting that the banks have been put on the naughty step and told they must be nice about the budget, otherwise they can expect some taxes themselves. Labour MPs have been all over Twitter and the other social media networks in the last few days, basically explaining how wonderful it is that everyone's going to get taxed even more, so that people who aren't doing very much can live slightly better lives. The fact that they are doing this, plus the stuff with the FT and everything else, to me smacks of panic that is now starting to come out of government. And panic they should, because I suspect this this budget is going to go down like the Titanic in the end. Jim O'Neill, a world-class financier, has come out and basically said that the government is now governing for themselves, not for the national interest, of which I have to agree with. If you cannot rustle up the will to make hard decisions now, when you are only 18 months into what should be a 5-year term, then you're not going to find the energy and the political will to do it in another year or two's time, when effectively you're in the approach to any election, should it go to 5 years, and that's a big question. You have a Labour government now whose entire political and economic strategy is leading us into crisis, and I'd say that with absolutely no joy in my heart. I am someone who would be impacted by it. I live in the UK, I work here, etc., etc. I'm a British citizen. I love my country, and I do, regardless of which government it is, I don't want to see us in crisis. But crisis we are heading into, because Labour is unwilling to choose, and therefore their only response to everything is more taxes. Furthermore, where they're choosing to spend that money is wholly negative in terms of outcomes for us. In an ideal world, I would love to be able to transfer ever more money or I would love everyone in this country to be incredibly well off and not have to worry about things. However, transferring ever more money to welfare recipients who should be going out to find jobs, migrants who are probably almost certainly going to get their welfare spending topped up, and pensioners who may have paid in all their lives but are already doing incredibly well out of the state, is grossly unfair. But actually also on top of that, it's wholly negative for incentives, because for people like myself and millions of other people like me who get up every day, we sit there and we are now more and more asking, what is the point of this system? The state and the system is now wholly extractive against us, as I've said previously. On top of that, you have the madness of net zero, which a huge amount of this money is being poured into. If you look at the latest allocated resources round, and this is shorthand AR7 is the latest one. This is how the government basically spends our subsidies. Mr. Miliband has decided that he's going to pay £113 per megawatt hour for fixed turbines in the sea. He's going to spend up to 271 megawatt hours for any floating turbines in the sea. To give you some idea, it's approximately, we can generate that same energy for £84 per megawatt hour using gas, and even lower using coal. This is mad. He is driving up our energy costs for the rich and the poor, and in that same time pulling down the growth of the country. And that's what you're seeing across the board. Ever more money is being pumped from the productive to the unproductive. Ever more money is being dumped into net zero, driving up energy and driving down growth. This entire political economy that it started with Labour, New Labour, the Tories have continued and Labour have come back again and doubled down on, is basically dying on its arse. I have to say that overall, I believe, and there's plenty of other people like Liam Halligan who agree with me, or maybe I agree with Liam Halligan, that the economy has well and truly passed the point where tax and spend is really going to work. On average, the British economy tends to start struggling once the state grows round about 40%, above 40% of the of GDP. We're at 45%, and she's going to keep growing it. What that basically means is the fact that overall our growth is likely to continue shrinking. Probably would be a bigger problem apart from our Rachel has already stalled the economy. You only actually have to look at what's happened over the last 3 months and the numbers that have come out. Her kite flying and this completely dysfunctional budgeting process that she and they have continued and enhanced has basically completely stalled the British economy. And I suspect that basically means that we are heading into a recession in the new year, likely matched by much of Europe, if not the world. So rather than borrowing less, as she's going to complain, I suspect that she's going to end up borrowing a lot more. Apparently, her big reveal will be welfare spending, and this will be the effort to cut spending. Now, wonderful. I would love to see welfare spending brought down. There is huge amounts of fraud in the system, and even without that, there are millions of people who need to be told to go and get a job. And if they cannot get a job, then they should be given a job cleaning up the country. There is enough rubbish, graffiti, gardening and everything else to be going to keep people occupied for a very, very long time. I am also not someone who's particularly believes in criminals sitting in prisons for the same reason. They should be out doing these things. I personally think that you are now looking at a government that is in crisis. I don't believe for 1 second that welfare reform will actually happen. I think much like these very limited changes to immigration, I think that they are going to burn up on entry when it come into Parliament. If you cannot force your will upon a parliamentary party when you have a majority of 200 on something that's relatively non-contentious, uncontentious, then you have no chance of doing that with welfare reform. And I suspect that the financial markets will realise that very, very quickly if this is how she's going to sell the budget to them. Overall, I think this budget will sink like the Titanic. And as much as anything else, because millions and millions of people like me and probably yourselves who are right-minded, who generally don't mind paying taxes to help the worse off and to try and create a fairer society, are now looking at down the barrel of this budget, but also the long history of the last 20 years and just going, this just doesn't work for me, and I'm sick of it. I think there is a real change within our society, within the country at the moment, about toughening up and the government to actually stop being such a flabby monster and for people to start making hard choices. And I think this is something that Reform particularly has under Farage in the last few weeks starting to get their heads around and actually starting to put forward suggestions of what they would do. I suspect also that many pensioners, if this budget is as put forward by the media, will actually be very angry. Because although they may sit there and appreciate having the 4.5% transferred to them in terms of a pension increase, I suspect millions of them, like my mother, maybe like your own and everything else, are looking around at the country and just going, well, this is just grossly unfair. We're having our mouths stuffed whilst our kids and our grandkids are getting a progressively worse and worse deal from it, and the country overall is rotting into the ground. As I touched on a minute ago, I suspect the bond market will respond very negatively if, as I said, the budget is as put forward. I think that they will look at it and go, you're effectively front loading more money into welfare to placate your party, and you're trying to buy us off with some welfare reform at some point, and we don't believe you're going to manage that, and they shouldn't do, because I don't think they will. Overall, I think that this is likely to be a continuation of the slow motion crisis that we've been in for the last year or so. I also think that overall we're looking at a government this is the beginning of the end. I have to say, I think that, I don't think Starmer and Reeves will be around for much longer. I don't think anyone that replaces them will be much better. But I think overall this is probably the beginning of the end of this Labour government. I don't think there is I think there is a large chance that we're now looking at some sort of financial crisis, or at the very least a big enough move in guilt that it triggers some sort of political crisis. Might not happen immediately, but I think that it's highly likely to happen now. The only thing that I would like to just finish with, and I know it's a bit of a trope, but it's true, governing is to choose. You have to choose your priorities. You have to choose where you want to spend your time, your money and your efforts. And today, when I look at it, I see a Labour government that is not listening to the public when it comes to migration, is not listening to the government the public when it comes to net zero and the energy costs and its impact it's having. It has basically progressed with and people will say, well, they're private members' bills, but they were effectively government bills to legalise abortion to term, and they are in the process of trying to push through assisted suicide for older and more vulnerable people. Labour has made its choices. Those choices are completely out of touch with where the country is, and I suspect this budget will be that moment where what little support they have left gives up the ghost as people realise that they are not going to change. They cannot change. Labour is incapable of changing because the PLP and the membership are complete lunatics. It is a crank-filled party, much like the rest of the left now, which obsesses over things that have next to no material interest to the general public, and when they do impact the public, the public is generally appalled by it. So we'll see tomorrow. I did get asked, am I going to watch the budget? Probably not. I will be honest with you. I find her intensely annoying to listen to. Not because she's a woman, I hasten to add, just because I find that she is terrible at giving speeches. I will probably read the ins and outs of it once it's been dissected a little bit more and watch a couple of vignettes from it. I have better things to spend my time on, particularly as I suspect this budget overall probably won't survive very long. Anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys. Bye.